Captain Midnight.
This video is sponsored by Audible. So a weird thing happened late last week where a reporter from the Wall Street Journal emailed me asking if I would give an interview about The Witcher and its mixed reception from critics. I did end up talking to him for a little bit, and I'll put a link to the final story in the description. But that conversation really got me thinking about The Witcher again, and more specifically about the future of the franchise. So that's what I want to dive into this week, where Netflix's Witcher franchise can go now that Season 1 was, apparently, such a big success for them.
Ludzie! Wasze miłości! Tam smok wielki smok!
So Netflix recently confirmed rumors that an animated film called The Witcher: Nightmare of the Wolf is being made, produced by the animation studio behind Legend of Korra and written by the same team who brought us the show. Right now, it doesn't seem to be known when the movie will be released, but there is an interview from a few months ago where one of the show's executive producers said that they were, quote, planning a few more interesting surprises between seasons. Add to that the fact that this project has apparently been up and running for a while now in secret, and that the next season of the show isn't coming out until 2021. I wouldn't be surprised to see this film actually get released first and kind of serve as a story to keep The Witcher on people's minds while waiting for season 2. And I actually think that's a really good idea. Netflix's release strategy has almost always been to dump all the episodes online at once, like they did with season 1. This has the advantage of making the release day feel like a big event, especially for a highly anticipated show. But there is a downside. Having some of your audience blaze through the whole season all at once, while others take their time, does mean that it is harder for a show to stay in the conversation. Something like The Mandalorian didn't really have this problem because every week the show was generating a new discussion, while the last season of Stranger Things seemed to fade out from the conversation pretty fast. So far, The Witcher hasn't had that problem nearly as much, but from what I hear, the animated movie was put into production before the show was released. So it makes a lot of sense that Netflix would think they needed to plug that Witcher-sized hole in 2020. Which leads us to the next obvious question. What do we want to see in this movie? Well, the released logline is pretty vague, just saying that Geralt will face a powerful new threat on the continent. So basically just, it's gonna be a Witcher story. I guess that does tell us one thing, that it probably won't be focused on the Nilfgaardian characters. One thing Season 1 got criticism for is how it presented Nilfgaard as more straightforwardly evil than the Witcher universe usually goes in for. The showrunners have said that they intend to dig deeper into Nilfgaard in Season 2, and with only 8 episodes, I can kinda see why they didn't have space for it, but it does sound like it won't be a big part of this film either. I know what I want to see is, and I almost feel weird saying this, a prequel. Usually I'm not a big fan of prequels, but I'm very willing to make an exception here. For a few reasons. One is that I think it would be kind of weird for this to pick up right where the show left off. I really think they need to leave that to the show and let this animated project be very much its own thing. But more importantly, there's just so much to explore there. Like, we know that Season 2 will probably involve Geralt's mentor, Vesemir. So I think it would be really smart to tell a story about a younger Geralt, someone still very much learning from Vesemir. Maybe even the story of Geralt going through the trials as a kid. Him and Vesemir have a really interesting relationship. One built off a lot of respect for each other, but as it's made clear in the Season 1 finale, Geralt also has a lot of deep-seated issues when it comes to how he grew up, and specifically how he was pretty much abandoned as a child. Doing a film about a younger Geralt, maybe not a child, but younger than the more experienced Henry Cavill, could go a long way towards exploring that and giving his relationship with Vesemir a lot of texture. Even if you don't have to watch the movie to understand what's going on in the scenes between them in Season 2. I think that's kind of the ideal for a side project like this. Something that adds to our understanding of the character and that feels meaningful in its own right, but won't distract from the main narrative if you choose not to watch it. Another thing I really hope they lean into with it is the monsters. Now, the show does a pretty solid job with them, I think. Sure, stuff like the dragons didn't look great, but I love the Striga. It really seems like the more they can do with real makeup, the better. but animation doesn't have this problem at all. So I really hope it goes all out with great designs and uncompromised creativity with these things. If you've seen Netflix's animated Castlevania show, you know how willing they are to go all in on some really gory, really fun fight scenes, and I think that's something that would suit The Witcher perfectly. It's also exciting that they have the studio behind Korra working on it. I know a lot of people have problems with the show, and I definitely have some myself, especially in that first season, but the animation was never one of them. And I look forward to seeing what they can do with more time and less to animate than a full season of TV. I'm just betting that this thing will look really great.
Let me guess. She's got a dragon.
But if that's the appetizer, let's talk about the main course, Season 2. Not to exaggerate, but I really do think this will be the make or break season of the show. The first season was good and really promising, but definitely not without its faults. If Season 2 can learn from those mistakes and make the show even better, I think this thing could run for a long time and probably even be remembered as one of the greats. If it comes back and is just kind of whatever, I think people will probably move on from the whole thing pretty quickly, so it really needs to turn out well. Overall, I liked how Season 1 played with the timeline. I thought it was an interesting structure that allowed the show to blend some standalone stories with more serialized ones. But now that the gang is almost all together, I think the smartest thing to do, first and foremost, would be to establish their group dynamic really well. With the exception of Yennefer and Geralt meeting up a few times, we've mostly seen these characters on separate journeys, and I'm sure to some extent will continue to. But I think the start of Season 2 should really be selling us on how well this cast can play off each other. There's a section of The Witcher 3 that I really love. It's when Geralt goes back to Kaer Morhen and spends time with Yennefer and his fellow Witchers. They all have kind of complicated relationships, filled with good memories and brotherhood, but a lot of baggage too. The dialogue is great and filled with subtext to read into, and instead of playing out like most video game cutscenes, these interactions feel really meaningful in understanding who Geralt and Yen are. They don't just advance the grandiose fantasy plot, and that's the feeling that I would love to see captured in Season 2. If we're gonna have a season, or at least an episode of 2, of Geralt going home to Kaer Morhen, I really hope they make the most of it and use that time to do some good character work. And I definitely wouldn't mind if Lambert could show up too. Then there's Ciri. In my opinion, she had the most predictable story arc in the first season, but I also think Freya Allan is really good in the role. This season could take advantage of her finally having scenes with Geralt, and hopefully the Bard as well. And while the books give fans a real blueprint of where these stories will go, I think there's still a lot of room for surprise here. I'm excited to see what character arc they have for her, and how much they want to lean into her story from The Blood of Elves, because I think what they did with her and Yen in that novel worked really well. The Witcher is a show filled with a ton of promise, with great source material and a really solid first season to build off of. And I'm really hopeful that over the course of the next couple years, from both the animated movie and Season 2, it'll become really clear that its success wasn't just a fluke. That under this team, it can be a really memorable and long-lasting television show. Geralt of Rivia has conquered a few different artistic mediums already, and with Season 2 and a film on the way, hopefully that trend will only continue. And if you like the show or the games but haven't quite gotten around to diving into the books yet, maybe 2020 can be your year. Whether you want to start with the short story collection The Last Wish or the first novel in the saga that I recently listened to, Blood of Elves, you can do it for free. And you know what? It's a new year. No matter what your goal is in 2020, you'll find the perfect audiobook at Audible to help you out. Whether it's getting physically fit, financially fit, or learning new skills, it's all on Audible. Plus, Audible is issuing a challenge to current and new members. Finish 3 books by March 3rd and get a $20 Amazon credit. It's that simple. Finish 3 by 3/3 and get $20. Audible members can choose 3 titles every month, 1 audiobook and 2 exclusive Audible originals you can't hear anywhere else. You'll also get access to exclusive guided fitness programs to help start the new year off right. So go to audible/midnight or text midnight to 500-500 and sign up today. That's audible/midnight or text midnight to 500-500.
Here
here's a special tip for the fellas and girls who have not already joined Captain Midnight's new 1940 Flight Patrol. You'd better hurry up and join at once because there's a big adventure ahead. The thing to do now is to get started because we're going to have not only barrels of fun, but loads of free gifts and prizes, too.